Hello, my name is Bill Haley, and this is for Haley 2024, The Movements, Government Reform Ideas. Now, this video is going to be on taxation. How is the taxation going to work in this new constitutional proposed amendment? So I'm proposing an amendment to replace the federal constitution. It will replace every state constitution and actually become the constitution for every locality. So it's a much more free enterprise document than what we currently have, more limited government, but it's more of a competitive governance where people can choose how they want to be governed, to be competitive governing agencies. So let's go through the quick overview of the whole thing. There's a lot more longer overviews, but we'll try to keep this overview down to about 5 minutes and then go into all the taxation clauses. And there's a lot more to it than what I can go over with this. There's a lot to it. But I'm going to give you the bulk of the taxation. And I just want to keep this video not 40 or 50 minutes long, but shorter. So let's keep on going through this. So I want to split all government power up into 30 sectors. Distinct elected leadership per sector. So you got family law in one sector, commander-in-chief in another sector, you got military in another sector, you have violent crime in a sector, the courts in a separate sector, the prisons in a separate sector, healthcare, financial, insurance, food, education, environment, all these things in separate sectors. We'll go through all the 30 in a little bit. And we'll discuss taxation in each one. So, within each sector, you select what governing agency you want to go with. They're called CRAs, Competitive Regulatory Agencies. Now, these competitive regulatory agencies, they govern, they regulate, and they send representatives up to the monopolized sector board level. Sector board level is at this level. On the other side, you have the rating system side, high quality information from a wide variety of perspectives. But let's keep on going through this, but you have to understand that every CRA, Competitive Regulatory Agency, these are competitive governance, they're full governments with executive, legislative, and judicial powers. The sector board is monopolized government just for the jurisdiction of, let's say, education, or just the roads, or just the environmental, or just healthcare, or whatever. So we separate the powers out. No one person is going to be over top of governing or regulating more than one sector at a time. So we vastly diversify representation and leadership and a lot of checks and balances within the system. Let me tell you right now before I go through the sections, we go significantly into the free enterprise system. Everything government is currently doing now will be done by the private sector. It goes into the free enterprise system. There's a few things that need to go to the monopolized governance, the sector board level, but only the only things that really need to. We'll go over those. But in the Constitution, we have citizenship. That's one of the sections talking about citizenship. General laws. Every constitution needs general laws. Bylaws talking about memberships, voting, the separation of executive, legislative, and judicial powers. There's a lot of stuff to go into on that, but that's an important part of the Constitution. The federal, state, and local. This is a federal, state, and local. There's one CRA structure for every current government. Every local government has a distinct CRA structure. Every state government has a distinct. Every state, just their state, has a full CRA structure. So Alabama has a CRA structure, and a totally different one for Alaska, a totally different one for California. And the federal government has one. Original authority, it's a teaching sector. It teaches where we get the original authority. It designates what level of the CRA structure has the final authority, whether at the CRA level, which is most, the sector board level, which is very rare, but there's some, it needs it. There's some accountability of sectors that really need it. They don't regulate, they do some regulation. They don't do so much, they oversight. It's an oversight role. They authorize anybody with inherent government power is a big one on that one. Anyway, supermajority, anything at the monopolized level has to get a 70% supermajority vote, so we don't have too much at the monopolized level. The parent sector board, we discussed how that works. I already did that video. The sector boards, they just do their sector at the monopolized level. That's what the sector board does. And then the competitive regulatory agency, that's 90% of everything in this. Everything around, every other part of the Constitution is to support CRAs. CRAs are the base of everything we're doing. And everything else just makes that CRA work better. The rating system does, the sector board does, parent sector board does. It makes the CRAs work. That's the base of everything. The rating system, we just did a video on that. It's out there in mid-April. By the way, I'm doing all these videos to support, to describe the CRA structure for the amendment. February, March, April, probably go into May of 2021. I did a whole bunch of videos about a year ago, early 2020, and describing everything. I revamped everything, I renewed it, I upgraded it, I significantly upgraded the Constitution. I spent many months just going over the Constitution, and I'm taking many months putting videos out talking about that. And this is one of those videos. Talking about taxation on this one. Debt, how we deal with the debt. That deals with a lot of the transition because we have a tremendous amount of debt and we need a mechanism. I do it structurally. This whole thing is structural in nature, by the way. It's not micromanaging regulations. It is structural in nature. Now, the transition does have a little bit of regulation type of thing, but still, that's structural in nature as well. But it does go a little bit more into that, more there, where it has a structure to get us out of debt. We sell off all government assets to the free enterprise system, and that's going to pay off the debt. Will it pay it all off? Maybe not, but that's going to be a big part of it. We have other ways to pay off some of the debt. So it's within the system, and I'll be doing that debt video probably today, a little bit later, mid-April. So let's keep on going. Pockets of Freedom is a foreign policy and immigration policy. It is to give people from around the world who are oppressed a place to come to freedom. And protected by our U.S. military. We'll get into that. We'll do a video on that soon. States partial acceptance per sector as to help get this whole thing passed through the amendment process. Get the support. The separation of responsibilities and authorities, a list of 30 sectors. Okay, I'll do the list of 30 sectors. You kind of saw it on the screen already earlier. I'll go over that at the end, and we'll go over each one. I'll have to do it briefly because this video is going to be probably 45 minutes to an hour anyway. I just don't need it 2 or 3 hours. Okay, the separation of responsibilities and authorities. Okay, the current government does a tremendous amount of taxing right now. Federal, state, and local together for 2020 was $9.78 trillion. That is for the 110 million households in America. That averages $88,000, almost $89,000 per household. That's not the income they're taxing based off of. I mean, we're a rich country. If this is what they tax, then what was their actual income per household? So we are a rich country. But $88,000 in 2021 because of the COVID, I'm not going to get into whether it's good or bad. There's a lot of bad into the COVID relief bills and everything. But we're going back down to about $8.16 trillion. Again, federal, state, and local combined, all of it together. We have 110 million households. In 2020, it was about 88, almost 89,000 per household average. And then 74,000 for 2021 because we don't have that same COVID bills. Well, we might. So we'll see if that ends up happening. Anyway, so we spend a lot on taxes right now. A lot of it's done by the rich people. A big percentage of it is done by the rich. The poor are not seeing tax bills anywhere close to $88,000. But guess what? When a big business or a business owner who pays a bulk of this tax, the only place they can get that is the consumers they sell product to. Bill Gates, the only place he can get to pay his tax is people buying Microsoft products. Jeff Bezos, the only place he can get his big time dollars, his income, is people using Amazon. There might be some other stuff too, but the bulk of it is people him serving people with Amazon services. So you're paying for a lot of your taxes throughout business. So this is business taxes, education taxes, this is everything. What I'm trying to get out on the screen is we pay a lot of taxes. And when we switch to a free enterprise, everything from free enterprise military, free enterprise police, courts, prisons, education, free enterprise roads, we have to pay for it. These are not going to be insignificant charges going to the people. Businesses are going to be probably paying over half of it. But that means you're paying for it within the transaction, whether you're doing it through that or your business having to pay that taxes versus paying your salary, increased salary. It all comes out of the transactions. It all comes out of interactions among the people. So it's not just all the rich people. Taxes finds a way to be even percentage or roughly even percentage throughout the country. So obviously the rich will pay more, even when you factor in everything. But the percentage of the income, percentage of the trades, ends up being, it ends up being equaled out. A rich person is not going to just take the whole hit. It goes into the transaction, whether it's coming out of somebody's salary or it results in people's extra high prices for the consumer good. So there's a lot to it, but it's out there. I'm just trying to show you that we're talking really big numbers, but we're a rich country, and how we're going to do taxes throughout this system. So here's a taxation section for the Constitution. All taxes from the current government before this amendment, so the current government is going to have to cease. You got a 5-year transition period. Hopefully, a lot of it will cease and will transition before the full 5 years. But the 5 years is to get from our current to the end point, to the full CRA structure. Now we're going to still have debt. We're going to have some taxes to pay off the debt. All that we'll get into. Every entity must pay the fee of membership for their CRA in every sector. Now, maybe I didn't say it on this video, but I've said it in many other videos. It's in everywhere. Everybody must belong to a CRA in all 30 sectors, an RA in all 30 sectors, at the local level, the federal level, and the state level. That's 180 associations, 180 memberships, 180 fees. So right there, you see how divided up we're going to be. That 88 or 75 or whatever thousand per household, it really gets divvied up tremendously. And it's not just you, but every business will be paying those as well. It will be diversified. It's still going to add up to quite a bit, but it will be spread out. You're paying for services. Government is services. CRA, they're going to provide services. Now, some CRAs are going to provide a lot of services and tax you for it. Other ones will provide a very small oversight over private businesses. You'll pay the private businesses and for the services, and then you pay them. Only a little bit goes to the government, however you want to do it. But there's 2 ways to do it. And I'll go over that probably a couple more times in this video. All CRAs set their own membership fees. There's a few that they don't get to set. There's a little bit more to it. There's a couple mandates, funding the prisons, funding the law enforcement, and the like. Sales taxes for the military. We'll get into that. But on the most part, 90% of the time now, if not a little bit more, all CRAs set their own membership fees. So when you select your CRA, you're going to have about 12 to choose from within every sector. You're going to probably have affiliated ones for this local, the state, and the federal. And all that will be divvied up a little bit. But you pick it. One might charge $50 a year. Another one might charge $60 and give you more services. Where you don't have to buy the services on the outside in the free market. Because the kind of CRAs are the free market in itself. You can have socialism within your free market, within the within the selected CRA. But since it competes with others, it's not so much socialism. It has elements of socialism. Just like insurance has elements of socialism. But people buy it in the free enterprise system. Similar to what I'm talking about here. But all CRAs set their own membership fees. You get what you pay for. Okay, I'm not going to read all the way through this. If you want to stop and read it, it's in the taxation thing. But what we're talking about is children under the age of 13, no fees whatsoever. But starting at the age of 13, every month you build up equally 1.66% per month. So when you on your first 13th birthday, you pay 1.66% of the full funding amount that you would have to pay. So you have to start working, or your parents can pay for it. Probably most likely you're going to do it through the charity economy is what I'm setting this up for. If you don't know the charity economy, I'm going to be doing videos on that. Everything's on my website. So we slowly, throughout your teenage years, from 13 to 18, you finalize that, and you're a full adult. You start paying your full fees. But you start off slow, and throughout the months, you pay. You keep on increasing how much you owe because you're getting the services. You're becoming an adult, and anyway, let's go on. When this amendment calls for CRA funding, fees, proportional taxes, among other obligations, that implicitly means the option of funding, contracting with, or paying private businesses regulated by the CRA that you choose, and accomplishing the goals of that mandatory funding. So there's two ways to do it. The CRA can do it, let's say for law enforcement, private sector law enforcement. Your CRA for law enforcement could supply all the police. You're paying them, and they're doing everything for it. Or they can mildly regulate a private sector police businesses, or a combination of both, where they have some police and subcontract out to some smaller private police companies, 3-man teams, 10-man teams, whatever you want to do it, even single proprietors, to be funding out. So, okay, let's just keep on going on. What else do I want to say on that? So you have two different ways of doing it. If you go with a private sector business that fulfills the obligation of the mandatory tax, then that's fine. Or you can pay the CRA itself, and they can pay the private sector businesses or provide the services themselves. So you have options. Again, this is competitive governance. You get to pick which one you want to go with. There's going to be a lot of different models out there. Roughly 12 different choices to go with. And I'm sure everybody's going to try a lot of different things to see what works. And guess what? You get to select it. And if you don't like it, you can always switch your selection to another CRA, another police business, another education CRA, however you want to do it. Taxes, fees, loan payments, and other obligations may be collected through work in the charity economy instead of cash payments. So we get rid of all government welfare altogether. We have a charity system where everybody has to pay 5% of their income, even businesses. The goal is about $1 trillion for the whole economy, for all of America. But that is at the federal level, 20%, state levels, every state gets 40%, and then your locality gets 40%. So it's very dispersed. And but the charity economy is a way for you to put labor hours in, helping the poor, and an economy is a way that you can put services into one area that you're good at, and the poor can get helped by another service. That's what an economy is. You do work that you can do well, somebody else does work that they can do well, and they transfer your work. Let's say you go mow lawns, and a doctor treats a patient that has a hard time paying. So that's what I'm talking about. That's what an economy does, and that's what the charity economy can do. So if you put extra hours in there, that can compensate for some taxes, some fees, some loan payments, and the like. The fair market value of work in the charity economy needs all parties involved agreement. So, yeah, that's just a checks and balance right there. We don't want somebody saying that, hey, I'm a rich guy, I owe $1 million in charity fees, and I'm going to go work one day at a soup kitchen ladling some soup to the poor and count it as $1 million. No. I'm just trying to do a checks and balance on this. Every rating system must set a rating floor on charity economy that accepts work for mandatory membership payments regarding dishonesty. The rating system is dealing with fraud. It's giving high quality information from a wide variety. Well, the main thing is high quality information from a wide variety of perspectives. But the rating system has the duty, one of the big duties is to root out dishonesty, fraud, and corruption. So the rating system must do that in the charity economy. Because whenever you do something like this, you can pay for something with the charity economy. All of a sudden, there's 100 ways for somebody to game that system, and the rating system's not going to let you do it. You're gonna have a whole bunch of people looking at what you're doing, and if you're doing something corrupt, they're going to call you on it and say, no, you can't do it. You have to help the poor, 5% of your income. You can't get around it by doing games. The rating system of every sector must set rating floors regarding adequate funding. So that's every sector. Every sector is dramatically different, but that's part of the rating system. The rating system is important, no doubt about it. It's part of this. The CRAs are more important, 80%, but the value of the rating system, doing rating floors and high quality information from a wide variety of perspectives, that's going to be so incredibly important, just so needed, and able to allow so much to stay at the CRA level and not go up to the monopolized level, because it's going to stop that corruption. Okay, with a 70% vote, the rating system may require CRA funding as a percentage of an entity's income, sales, real estate value, or another suitable proportional method. So this is a constitutional clause, but it takes a 70% vote to get there. Normally, everybody pays the fees for the services they're getting, but there are some times when it just costs too much for that government service. And police, I kind of have it in the place already set up in the Constitution, but some other ones, it just might be too much for the poor to pay those fees. And it has to go more of a proportional. I know it all boils down in the end, but it's going to allow this whole system to be set up and allow that to work a little bit better. Now, when it's proportional like that, I think I have it right here. I'll have it in another one. I'm not going to jump ahead. Membership fees must include a head tax and collecting no less than 10% of a sector's overall funding if a proportional funding method is required. So if they come out with a proportional funding method, 10% of it has to be a head tax. We don't want to go too far into the proportional. We put some limitations on that. A rating system mandated proportional funding method of taxation may not use deductions, exemptions, nor credits greater than the head tax. So you're allowed to deduct the head tax, but that's it. Exempt, deduct, credits, whatever. The head tax, but that's it. So we're not getting exemptions, tax credits. They're bad for taxes. It creates a wrong incentives, and it creates much higher tax rates, reducing down the willingness to do the economic activity that is taxed. And we don't want to disincentivize economic activity that is taxed. The tax code at the sector board level may not be used for welfare. So right now there's a tremendous amount of welfare within the tax code. We don't want that. So I put it in the Constitution. You can't do that. Now the CRAs can do it. In any way, CRAs can do almost anything. This is the sector board level. The tax code or fee schedule may only collect funds, not distribute funds. So when I say the tax code cannot be used for welfare, I really try to define it, and I don't want anybody to have any room for getting around that. So I put in the tax code or fee schedule may only collect funds, not distribute funds. So it's two different ways of saying it. This clause does not authorize taxes at the sector board level. This clause limits the sector board authority. Right now, I don't want just to say tax code cannot be used at the sector board level for welfare. That does not give anybody the authority to do a tax code at the sector board level. It has to be at the CRA level, unless it gets at 70% and the like. So I want to make sure by giving authorization or forbidding them from doing welfare does not give them authority to do taxes in the first place. We see too much of that in our current Constitution, where we tell them what they can't do throughout the Constitution, and that says, oh, we can do everything around that. That gives us authority to do everything but that. And it's just a bad thing. 90% of the Constitution, current U.S. Constitution, is not, 90% of what we do is not authorized by the current Constitution. Anyway, the parent sector board may set temporary emergency taxes with a 70% vote to deal with a significant negative externality. This is not going to happen. It's a fail-safe just in case something huge happens. And it has to be temporary. It takes a 70% vote. 40% vote can repeal the emergency tax. And the parent sector board must designate which sector CRA will collect the tax. The parent sector board never collects taxes. They just say who does. 70% of the sectors of the Sector 3 sector board may subjectively exempt, partially or entirely, a person of taxes or CRA fees on personal hardship grounds. The AO sector board must distribute the burden of exemption among all CRAs. So this is the assessor organization, the case manager. And if somebody has autism or a learning disability, they are blind, people that are blind can do plenty of good, hard, productive work, don't get me wrong, but people who have major challenges that cannot necessarily pull their whole economic weight of society, we want to give them some help. Instead of just having the charities pay all those fees, the AO sector can say this person, for a small period of time, they can exempt partial or the whole tax burden, all the fees and everything, so they don't have it. But then it does have to be distributed among all the CRAs, the relevant CRAs. Because that is a burden, because they still get services, just like everybody else. They still get law enforcement services. They get protected by the military. They get land and water services. They get identity services. All these things still are there, and they still need that, and they can't afford it. They fell on massive hard times with some significant challenges in their life. Okay, a share loan is defined as a percentage of a well-defined property/real estate value or an entity's income over a well-defined period of time. Certain taxes may be turned into share loans and sold to a Sector 9 MCAP. MCAP is my monetary reform. It is competitive money with one standard. An NCAP is monetary capital asset portfolio, and that is items of real value, a portfolio of real value. And what that does is you create currency based off of that real value, and only that real value, 100% backed up money. And so that's important to know. But what I'm talking about is I have all taxes going to eventually turn into this type of share loan, and that's going to be your identity sector CRA, and identity CRA, which is Sector 25, is going to manage that for you. So it's hard to get an understanding of what that is until you read through that. But this is a taxing sector. I don't have time to get into that right now, but I will be putting out videos on the monetary system, on the everything else. and we'll get into that. On my next video, actually, I'll be doing later, soon in April of 2021, I'll be doing a video on debt. So you'll see some of that on there. Clauses outside but relevant to CRA Section 11, taxation. So that was all the clauses in my taxation sector, but there's other ones within the Constitution that's really relevant. Okay, foreign entities, they pay taxes just like everybody else, just by being a business and everything else, the normal fees, but there's an extra 5% trade tax, a foreign trade tax, in or out of the country, and that's to help pay for the military. So that will be there. Sectors 1, 2, and 3 CRA fees are intended for organizational overhead. Sector 2 mandatory proportional fees are meant to fund the operations of sectors 1, 2, and 3. You'll understand that a lot more with when I get into the CRA. But for these three sectors, there are CRAs only for CRA organizational overhead. Not so much for the services that they're providing. The mandatory tax and fees will be for that. The CDA sector, okay, this is a biggie. 5% of everybody's income, 5% of the business's income. And now, it might not be exactly 5% because what I'm rooting for is 5% of GDP. So whatever that percentage is, needs to be for personal income, business income, and the like, it has to achieve 5% of GDP, roughly $1 trillion. So a head tax has to collect 1% of it. So we do a minimum. Everybody has to help the poor. Everybody, even the poor. Now, if you're really poor and you just can't make any money because of the disabilities, you can apply not to pay fees through the AO sector. Take 70%, so it's not going to happen often, but people with Down syndromes and some major injuries and the major illnesses, the older people, and not all older people, but some older people with just nothing to their name whatsoever are not going to be able to handle this. So they're going to be exempt. Okay, I'm not going to read the full thing here, but 5% of GDP. You can read through it and look at that more. Okay, here's a foreign protection system, and again, the CRA fees are. Well, let me go back to this one real quick. For the charity system, that 5% of GDP is for operational basis for sectors 1, 2, and 3, and the CRA fees are just for CRA overhead. Same thing with the 5 sectors in the foreign protection system. The diplomats, the commander-in-chief, the military itself, the military capability system, which is a funding mechanism, and then the oversight board, the societal oversight, they authorize anybody with inherent government power in the military. So their CRA fees are just for organizational overhead. That's going to be very minimal. Now the big funding is going to be on the next slide here. Every state level let me state it. 5% of GDP has to go there. It has to be done through sales tax. 1% will go to the state. 1% of GDP goes to the states. That's 20% of the funding for the military goes to the state military operation. 4% of GDP, or 80% of the overall funding, goes to the federal military funding. And they it's all free enterprise. Well, the military is free enterprise, but it's only free enterprise to a certain degree. We pay for capabilities. These are all private companies, and they're selling what they're selling, and what the product is capabilities, military capabilities to America. They can never use their military capabilities outside of commander-in-chief. That is so ingrained in everybody. That's ingrained in the whole rules, the accountability. There's so many checks and balances to create a system where nobody can do something that's not allowed to be done. There's just going to be so much oversight, a lot more than there is now. So I'm not gonna have to read through that whole thing right now. If you want to read it, you can pause and read it. But the total of 5% of GDP is the system. Now, the 5% of the foreign trade tax, that foreign trade tax, 5% going to the military, that comes off of that. So comes off that 5%. So we're not adding to it by having the foreign trade tax, but the foreign trade tax needs to be protected. The ships coming over, the trucks going in and out, all the stuff needs to be protected, and our military needs to protect it. It needs to be paid, but we don't want to have too much going to the military. 5% of GDP, I think, is an appropriate amount. Now, it's not just the military, it's State Department, it is NASA, it is the command structure. They have a very narrowly focused educational mission. They can actually start at age 13 for military capability training, if you will, educational training. So that some of this might fund some of the education, because we go free enterprise education. But for the people who want to go into the military, they can start getting their funding through the military, maybe at age 13 to a certain degree, with long-term contracts, with a lot of clauses that they can get out if they wish not to go in that direction, and pay it back through contracts and the like. We'll get into that. Probably not on this video, but that's just going too far into the rabbit hole right now. But it's thought out, and there's a lot of ways that can be done. Any questions that say, I'm not sure if that's going to work? Remember, we have competitive governance. 12 different CRAs can do it 12 different ways. Private sectors always have a method of making something work. So let's keep, and the rating system is going to give high quality information. We're not going to have too much fraud, because the rating system is going to root it out. And self-dealing and all that stuff. We have ways to deal with all that. Let's keep on going. Did I finish this one? Yes, we just take away that whatever the foreign trade tax is, the trade, any 5% of trade going in or out of America will be taxed 5%, and that's going to take off of the amount needed from the sales tax. So the total is 5% of GDP. Okay, let me see. I think I just talked about that one. Yeah, I'm not going to go further into that one right now. If you want to stop and read it, you can. It's all needed, but I think I just talked about that one enough. 25% of the rating floor level of the 25% of the rating floor level of the law enforcement funding must come from a citizen head tax paid to their selected CRA, Sector 12 CRA. I don't want anybody that is somewhat poor not to be able to get proper law enforcement. So we go proportional. 25% of the rating floor level. So the rating floor sets a minimum level of law enforcement fees. And part of that is going to be from a citizen head tax. So we want every citizen to pay something. Even if they don't have a job. You're going to be working in the charity economy. If you don't have a job and you don't have savings, you're going to, a charity economy can put you to work day one. 25% of the rating floor level of the law enforcement funding must come from a proportional real estate tax. So everybody has a real estate tax right now. Even if you rent, you still pay real estate tax because it's built into the rent. You might not think you're paying it, but the landlord has to pay it. He's going to add that into your rent. There's just no doubt about it. You're paying it. That's the only place the money can come from, unless he's just losing money. The landlord's just losing money. So part of this is proportional. Part of it's the head tax, but part of it's proportional. And 50% comes from sales taxes. So businesses have to pay for law enforcement as well, not only individuals. By the way, when you're talking about law enforcement, there's so many avenues to get money to the law enforcement businesses. Roads will have to hire police to monitor the roads. Homeowners will have to hire police to give them police services for their house. Every business will have to hire police services to protect their business. If you have a large land with a large value, that's why it's partly real estate tax, you're going to be paying a little bit more. So there's a lot of avenues. Every hospital will be paying for for police protection. Every business, everything will be paying for paying it. So law enforcement is going to, it's not that much really when you look at the whole scheme of things. It's not a high percentage of GDP, but it's still going to be a decent amount of money. And what I'm trying to say is some of it's sales tax, some of it's real estate tax, but I never want to get rid of that head tax either, because everybody needs to have their selected CRA protect them. And all police officers have to give initial protection to anybody in danger as part of having a badge. You don't just protect the people that contracted with you and are contracted through your police CRA, your police business. Now, an hour later, it's your police business coming in and doing the investigation. But the immediate need of 911 calls and like anybody with a badge within regulations have to go over and protect anybody who needs immediate assistance. But then as soon as your police business can come in under your contracts, they come in and they do the investigation of the robbery or the assault, whatever the case may be. 50% of the funding needed for violent crime prisons, so we go prisons, needs to come from a citizen head tax. I need everybody paying a percentage of this by head tax. So important that everybody puts their money where their mouth is. When they select their prison CRA, prison CRA will manage prisons or provide prison services. So it's important that everybody selects which ones. That's your representation. And it's highly important. That's 50% of the funding for that. Then 50% is going to come from sales taxes, and that's going to go to the sector board. And then the sector board has to use rating system to divvy up that money. The people who are doing prisons good will get more money. People who are doing prisons badly, and we're talking about reparations, long-term thriving of the person who was convicted. There's a lot of ways, and I have it in the Constitution. I'll get to it on another video when I do this prison video. Education tax. Now, we go free enterprise education. Everybody's going to have to pay for their own education going forward. But we don't want somebody who was 25 years old, went through 12, 13, or let's say 14 or 15 years of publicly funded education. The other years were college or whatever. And we don't want them to not have to pay because they got it through government taxes. The way education taxes work right now through our current government is government pays for your education, at least 85% of the people. Some 15% of the people, they go to private school or not go to the public school, they don't get that benefit. So if you did go through the public school system, then you still pay with that education tax. You go forward with that education tax. You do that continuously throughout your lifetime, and then when nobody else is left in 40 or 50 years, then the education tax is gone. That's going to help pay off a lot of the debt. So your education tax continues if you got a public education. Now, if you're 50 years old, you only have another 10, 15, 20 years left to work, that's fine that you pay that education tax because you've already paid the education tax from age 20 to 50. So basically, the way education tax works right now through the public school system is they give you the benefit up front and you pay really $9,000 or $10,000 per year per household average. That's how much education tax is. And I have a way of doing that. Now, whether I worked out the numbers exactly or not, I'm going to have people help me with this. but I have a system. I'm not going to read the whole system because it gets kind of confusing, but this is a prorated system. So if you don't, if you didn't go to the public school system the whole way, then you don't do it. But we also do it. Your parents pay for it until you're hit age 13 through the public school system, and 13 and above, if you went to the public school system, you're paying the education tax. I did a separation. I could have a long discussion with you about why, but you can look at this and try to understand what I'm trying to get at there. Then if you're over age 13, you're paying education tax too if you went to the public school system. Now, if you went to private school the whole way through, you didn't get the benefit. You don't pay the tax. It is highly wrong, unconstitutional. It is just so wrong the way we're currently doing education tax. Education tax should only be for the people who got the benefit of the public school. Everybody gets educated, whether it's private school, homeschool, or public school. Everybody gets educated, or at least they should get an education. So everybody's benefited by everybody with the education. Everybody's benefited by the private school children getting education and being an educated person throughout their life. And everybody's benefited by the public school child getting educated and being a productive citizen throughout life. But they didn't get, private school kids did not get their education paid for. So they should not have to pay this tax. But this is going to pay down a lot of the debt. And we'll get into this on the debt page a little bit. Every state level Sector 24 sector board must collect 5% of their state's GDP to fund the federal level Sector 9. So this is the labor law and sales. This is human resources and sales sector. This is a major taxing sector. This is sales taxes. So every business has to collect 5% and turn it over to the federal level Sector 9. I think I messed up here a little bit. I already had one in there where 4% goes to the federal level Sector 9 and 1% goes to the state level. So I need to do a quick adjustment on that one. I forgot that was separated there. Anyway, 5% is going to go to the military foreign protection system, whether it's the state level or the 80% to the federal level, 20% to the state level. Anyway, but that's sales tax. That's a biggie. So 5% of GDP is going to the military, full foreign policy protection system, and 5% is going to the full charity system. And charity system, if you got $1 trillion or 5%, boy, that's for the bottom 25% of the population is going to get somewhere on the order of $40,000 average per household. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. The bottom 25% of the households getting $40,000 each with the benefits, that's a lot. So, and you're going to be working these people. Anybody getting charity, the charity can put them to work. Now, maybe not everybody. That's why it's subjective determination. That's the best thing about charity versus the worst things about government welfare is the subjective determination. The government welfare cannot have subjective determination. The charity system can. Subjective determination is so incredibly important. Without it, you do massive harm to the poor. With it, and you have somebody wise, and it's not a monopolized system. It's a very diversified system. The money's all over the place with a whole bunch of different AOs, caseworkers or AOs, and that just is going to work so much better. Anyway, 5% for charities, 5% of GDP for charities, 5% for the military. I'm not sure exactly how much it's going to be for paying back to debt, but 5 to 10% is going to be roughly there. Because we switch over from Social Security to private sector, and that's going to give a lot of debt. That's the biggest bulk of debt we have. Hopefully we can take a big hunk out of that by selling all government assets. Every military base, every aircraft carrier, every school, every road. That's a lot of trillions of dollars. Many, many tens of trillions of dollars when you sell all these, every government piece of land, real estate, building, hospital, if it's public hospital, it is so important to understand that's going to bring in a lot of money to pay down the debt. The next video is going to be debt payments, or how we deal with the debt. The identity, personal, and business is a taxing sector. That is the main taxing sector. You got basically three: one real estate, the identity one's going to do the head tax and be responsible for other stuff. I'll go over that in a second here. But then the sales tax is going to be a big part of it as well. So we got three different sectors doing a sales tax, and other sectors are going to have kind of like a tax, but it's going to go through Sector 25. Anybody, unless it's even the real estate tax is going to have to go through Sector 25, the identity. There's a lot to get into. But the two taxing sectors are going to be the identity and the sales tax. The real estate tax is going to pay a lot, don't get me wrong, but it's going to go through the Sector 25 collecting the taxes. Sector 25 CRAs are responsible for ensuring and coordinating CRA fees, taxes, and obligations. So your CRA, Sector 25, they must ensure everybody belongs to a CRA and paying the CRA fees. If you don't, they're going to assign you to a charity economy and an AO, caseworker, and put you to work. I know that can frighten a lot of people right there, but you have to understand this is much more freedom. I mean, we have so much money going to the current government where you don't have control. This is going to be a much wealthier economy. This is going to work so much better. And I know everybody has to pitch in for a rule of law. Everybody who wants protection from police, everybody who wants protection from the military, everybody who wants the environment protected, everybody who wants nature parks, everybody who wants all the things that we're doing here, they have to pay part of it. They have to be part of the society. And I know this one right here is going to be just a sticker for some people where even if you don't work, you still have to pay. Well, there's a lot to that. And I don't want to go further into that right now, but I can make that case. Anyway, you're paying it regardless, even if you don't work in the current system, in this current system. Every time you buy anything, there are a tremendous amount of tax within the transaction. And so you're paying for it one way or the other. And I'm not saying you can't live a minimal life. You can in this new system. And anyway, let's keep on going. Sector 25 collects 10% head tax required when the sector board establishes a proportional tax. So we talked about that, but this one's saying that Sector 25 collects it. A Sector 25 must collect proportional real estate taxes when properly authorized. So the real estate one is in Sector 30, but the Sector 25 collects it when properly authorized by the sector board, or your CRA says it. You select your CRA. Real estate taxes must be on the occupant regardless of ownership. If there is no occupant, the owner must pay the tax. So when we have a full system of taxes where it's individualized, a lot more than the current system. So it's not going to go to the owner who's renting you the property to live in, the house to live in. It's going to go by who's occupying the place. So if you did not, let's say you were in private school, you don't have to pay the education tax. Your landlord does not have to pay the education tax for the land in the house that you have there. They never did in any way. You have to pay it as a landlord, as a person who got the tax. Or if you didn't go through the public school, you don't pay the tax. So it's on the occupant. Now, if there's no occupant, it's empty house. There might be a little bit less taxes going on anyway, because you don't need certain things. You don't need charity, for example, on an empty house. I think I probably just said something wrong right there. I don't have time to think about exactly that right there. But you definitely have to pay for police services for that house, even if it's empty. So let's keep on going. Sector 25 must collect proportional real estate taxes when properly authorized. I already did that. Okay, almost done here. Here's the 30 sectors, and let's go through each sector real quick. I'm at 55 minutes, and I really don't want to be over an hour. So 5% go into the three sectors right here: charity distribution associations, and the caseworkers, the AOs. Family law will charge its own. You don't have to pay anything for religion. That's very minimal, maybe a minimum of $10 a year or something, just to a little bit of oversight going on. Hey, and if you're totally secular and you don't want religion, then you get a CRA that is secular. And they'll fight for your right not to have religion in your life if you wish. But religion is more of fighting at a high level, at the sector level, for religious liberty. Or if you want to be secular, to have religious free, if that's what you want. But it doesn't have to be a lot there at all. That's very minimal. Again, sales tax has to give the military capability system 5% of GDP, $1 trillion or so, and they have to set up a funding mechanism for military capabilities to Sector 8, and then they pay for Commander-in-Chief, they pay for the diplomats, they pay for the Oversight Board, the Military Authorization Agency, and the like. Violent crime mitigation system, again, all free enterprise system. You have to pay for your prosecutors in Sector 11. You have to pay for your police officers in Sector 12. You have to pay for the Oversight Board in Sector 13. You have to pay for your court system in Sector 14, and you have to pay for the prisons in Sector 15. You have to pay for the regulations around your healthcare, and then healthcare, more the FDA type of thing, or at least the drug part of it. This is more medicine. You have to pay for that FDA type of system. Your financial regulations, what are they? The big financial regulatory boards doing big corporations and the like. Actually, big corporations might be Sector 25, but dealing with a lot of financial law. Banking law, that's going to be majorly diverse. Just like every one of these is going to be majorly diverse. You pay for your regulatory body that's going to that will regulate your banks, and that's going to also create monetary capital asset portfolio to do the money, private sector money. Insurance regulations. There'll be a regulatory body that your insurance company, you probably want to be a CRA of the insurance company that you want to go with. Now you can you don't have to go that way. You can be a CRA at one and then use another CRA. Another business that uses a different CRA. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but you can do it. Okay, food, education, manufacturing, human resources and sales, identity. You have to pay for these things for the regulatory bodies over the food part of the FDA, the education school boards, if you will, within yours. If you want a full school board that provides you school, you can do that, or pay the education school board with a very minimal amount, that just a little bit of oversight, making sure you are in a school, your private sector school, and then you pay in your private sector school. And then human resources, there's going to be an oversight board, a regulatory board for that has to be paid for, just like it does now. Everything that we're talking about, all these fees are being paid for in the current system, under your current U.S. Constitution, under the state constitutions, the current system, they're being paid for. And you saw how much, $80-some thousand per household. There's a tremendous amount. Okay, identity, that's ID cards, citizenship, ownership, their taxing sector. Environmental, that you have to pay for the EPA. There's going to be 12 different EPAs for the federal, 12 EPAs per state. Now they can coordinate together. Don't get me wrong. EPA you have to pay for your EPA at your local level, and there'll be 12 different EPAs at your local level. And yes, they'll be joined together with other ones for efficiency and productivity and stuff like that. Your roads, they're going to have a transponder system for payment. That's a natural market. You're not paying taxes for this. You might pay a small amount of taxes for the oversight of the whole thing, the CRA structure, the organization, a little bit for the transponder system, and making some of the general laws regarding the transportation. But the main paying for roads, that's going through the transponder system. You're paying tolls. No, you're never throwing a quarter out the window. Don't get me wrong. Nobody's collecting it at toll booths. Full transponder system. There's no reason to be unproductive on this. The media and communication, that's going to be a catch-all for a lot of a lot of things that you don't see within the 30 sectors. You might think of a government agency right now saying, I didn't see it in there. It's going to be in this one, Sector 29. It might be in Sector 27. Those are the two big catch-alls. But all these things need to be paid for. There's a few things that might not need to be paid for, or you can do it so much more productive where you're only paying half of what you're currently paying because you're just so much more productive. Then land and water. You're going to be paying for public parks within that sector. I mean, you have to. Everybody has to pay proportionally for their land and water, for public parks, state parks, federal parks, and the like. It's all privately owned, but your CRA is going to have to own a certain amount, or private public companies will have to have strong regulations on keeping a public park, not a nature friendly type of thing. Okay, so what we have here is a full system of taxation. Hopefully it's not going to be $88,000, $75,000 per household average, but you have to understand that we're paying that now. We're paying it through the goods that we buy, through that transaction cost. I mean, how much of the taxes we pay are within the when we buy a loaf of bread, let's say it's $3 for a loaf of bread, how much of that is taxes? It's hard for me to know. It's hard for anybody to know. People who study that all day long and for 20 years, it's hard for that to know because it gets collaborated all over the place. You can try to calculate it, but you're always going to be missing something. Anyway, hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what we're talking about. I didn't give any dollar amounts of how much will be taxed. I know I told you $1 trillion because we currently have roughly a $20 trillion tax. I mean, a $20 trillion economy, so 5% would be roughly $1 trillion for the charity system and for the military and the full foreign protection system. Okay. Anyway, in one slide, I'm not sure if I overlooked it here or not, but there will be a 5% foreign trade tax for charities to help poverty around the world. And that will be, so you have 5% foreign protection system tax to help protect, with our military protect ships coming over and doing the travel. And then you have the 5% for the charity system, and that's the only money that can be used to help the poor around the globe. Hopefully that's going to get people into the pockets of freedom where they can actually be productive. I'm not going to say it's no use to feed somebody who's being oppressed, but it's so much better to use that money for a bus trip to a pocket of freedom where they can start having freedom and start providing for themselves because they have the freedom to do it. Because it's hard to help yourself under oppression. Anyway, please consider a donation to this campaign and look over everything. Keep on looking at other videos for the overviews and look at it on my website. And until the next video.